By now, you know the D&D 5e 2024 rules update is mostly a character class update where everybody's getting a little more powerful, except the Game Master. D&D Beyond is even joking about this in some articles, claiming these new beefy player features are quote-unquote frustrating for dungeon masters. Like, sure, I'm always rooting for the player characters, and they're probably being kind of sarcastic, but it's a game. It must be fun, not frustrating, for everyone, especially the player who has to put in the most work. Fortunately, aside from these official 5e updates, and even aside from most of the D&D killers that are either adding things to take the game in new creative directions or rethinking the bones of D&D, but then building a whole new 300-plus page textbook of a game, there is but one upcoming high fantasy RPG that is doing its darndest to both innovate and condense 5th edition, but it hasn't gotten the attention it deserves until now. It's all in the name, Nimble 5e, and you may have seen me plug this tiny zine version of Nimble a while back. 20-page prototype, dense with modular rules, so you could pick and choose the parts you like to rebuild 5e in ways that are fun for you, not frustrating for you. But now, Nimble's getting a fully realized rule set that is still innovative, still modular and compatible with 5e, and still easy to get into because it's intentionally much shorter than the average 300-plus page RPG textbook. But it's not perfect. So even though this video is sponsored, backer kit campaign going on right now, check it out, link below, I'm going to give Nimble the same treatment as my recent review of DC 20, telling you what I like, what I don't like, and then what I love. And conveniently, Nimble's design makes it easier than usual to take what you like and leave the rest. So tell me in the comments as we go along what you like and what you don't. Nimble 5e Part 1, The Good. Instant Initiative. Not only is Instant Initiative a pretty cool name, but right out of the book, it almost exactly matches one of my favorite methods for initiative. Whichever player is ready first, or whichever makes the most sense story-wise, goes first, with play proceeding around the table clockwise. Then, monsters go when it gets around to the GM, sometimes splitting up the monsters between the players and letting the players hold their turn if they want. My only tweak is to sometimes go counterclockwise. Actually, I don't know if on screen which way will be counter. It's one of the smoothest ways to handle this turn-based part of the game, and as the name implies, it does instantly and intuitively transition from non-combat to combat. In fact, I like this method of initiative so much that the main reason I put it in this good section of the video instead of the great section is because it made more sense to start with this than to have some randomly determined topic go first. See what I did there? However, with Nimble, you do still get to roll initiative because it has this other cool mechanic. Action points. Similar to DC 20 and Pathfinder 2e, these heroic actions compile all the jargon of actions, bonus actions, reactions, legendary actions, etc. into one resource that you spend to do stuff. And in this game, player characters get 3 actions to spend during a typical round of combat, but the number of actions you get in the first round of combat is based on your initiative roll. If you roll a single-digit result, you get only 1 action in the first round. 2 digits, 2 digits. Why can't I say digits? 2 digits, 2 actions. 20 or higher, all 3 actions. That's a super cool way to still let your mechanically fast characters use their speed while also relying on the scene itself to determine who goes first, like we just talked about. However, like I talked about in my DC 20 review, I think action points can create some drawbacks, so they're gonna come up again in the bad section of this video, but also in the great section, because there's some really nice ideas wrapped up in this too, and there's one action we can talk about now. Attacks. Like Maze Rats, Cairn, MCDM, and many more RPGs that favor speed and fluidity over tradition and familiarity, Nimble 5e does not require a d20 roll to hit. You just roll the damage dice of your weapon. Now, we'll go over how defense works a little later, technically foreshadowing how I feel about it, but truly, this is about as fast as you can get for action resolution on a combat turn. With one roll, you instantly know if you hit or miss and the amount of damage. But Bob, wait, doesn't that mean like the biggest damage dice is always best, further reducing weapons to merely big dice equal good? No, because crits and fails. Thanks to some simple but clever mechanics, each damage die has a cool trade-off built in. Roll a 1, you miss. Roll max, you crit, meaning the attack ignores the monster's defense, and you roll damage again, and critical hits explode. So if you keep rolling max, you keep critting. Therefore, yeah, a D4 weapon does low damage by default, but it crits 25% of the time, while a D12 weapon does high damage by default, but it crits like 8% of the time. Trade-offs. These are the sorts of fun choices you should have when choosing a weapon. So I'm a fan. And Bob, don't forget to script a segue into the next part. Character stats. Strength, dex, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, but no constitution, because this is a lawless RPG of pure anarchy. Now, according to the zine version of Nimble, constitution is not used to derive any skills and overlaps so much with strength that it has been removed. HP is now strictly a function of class. That's why Daggerheart doesn't have a separate stat for a constitution-like thing. Neither does DC 20. Neither did the weird homebrew rule system that I wrote back when I was still figuring out D&D. Constitution just doesn't need to be its own thing unless your game is trying to be a one-to-one mirror of D&D. Same goes for ability scores. That's why every new game these days, including Nimble, only uses the attribute modifiers. And interestingly, like D&D 3.5e and Dungeon Crawl Classics, Nimble only uses 3 saving throws: strength, dex, and will, which is just the highest of your character's mental stats. And I like it because those 3 stats are the only 3 stats used by countless games in the indie RPG scene. Anyway, we're going to try to do these next ones pretty quick because I'm on edge. There's been no serious interruption yet. We got to move. Magic items. Right now, there's just a few in the draft of Nimble that I have, but I like how they're categorized by their contribution to the game. Release valve items for saving the day at the last moment, story-focused items for moving things along, and interesting combat items, which are pretty self-explanatory. Awesome optional rules, like I have the high ground, which is not just a fun nerdy reference, it's a great example of how gridless combat can still use tactical positioning. Same for the optional rules about losing the high ground, taking cover, throwing potions, forced movement, aka fall damage in any direction. But unlike fall damage where you take a number of d6s based on how far you moved, with forced movement you take a number of d6s based on how far you were supposed to move before suddenly being stopped by a wall, ceiling, creature, etc. And death. At 0 HP, you die. Just kidding. At 0 HP, you gain the dying condition and 1 level of exhaustion. Exhaustion means -1 to your d20 rolls, and dying means you can still attack and cast spells, but you only have 1 action per round instead of 3. And it's pretty urgent for your allies to heal you because you gain 2 more levels of exhaustion anytime you take damage while dying, and you actually die at 6 levels of exhaustion. But most importantly, you only recover from those levels of exhaustion by 1 level per long rest. So you can't really heal and get up and down and up and down and up. And I will have more to say about exhaustion later, foreshadowing, but we got 2 more good ones right now. Slot-based inventory. Plain and simple, slots are kind of the best way to make sure your gear matters while being super easy to track. And it's made even easier by this beautiful character sheet, only a half page, and so simple, so unlike the busy and distracting and hard to find where this... And this exhibits how the overall presentation of Nimble is really quite nice. Sure, I think the main font could be a little bigger, but the layout is just clean, and the artwork, it's wonderful. I love it. Lots of badass heroes, cool fantasy landscapes, and weird, scary monsters that'll be coming up in the great section of the video. But hey, if you want to get your hands on the beautiful, streamlined core rulebook that is Nimble 5e, and or the Nimble character book, which I haven't even talked about yet because it belongs in the great section of this video with its 11 reimagined player character classes and spellcasting system, and or the adventure book for levels 1 to 3 to help teach the rules as you go. This is your chance to get Nimble as a PDF, softcover, or hardcover box set with a GM screen, spell cards, and more. Just be sure to use my link down below so they know who sent you. And now we'll talk about the parts that I don't like. Nimble 5e Part 2, The Bad. And let me preface this part with a reminder, it's all just my opinion, and that's why it's helpful for you to share your first impressions or experience with these mechanics down in the comments. Action points. Told you this would come back around, and it will come back in the greats too, because I guess I'm still kind of on the fence about this topic, but I feel like taking actions when it's not your turn means you are interrupting the combat, slowing it down, possibly confusing the group about whose turn it actually was and who's supposed to go next. However, Nimble does include a few of these reactions, and the main one is totally fine and cool. Defend, because remember, there's no defense for PCs by default. You must choose whether or not to spend your actions to reduce incoming damage. That's another fun trade-off, and since you can only use this one when you're already part of the turn that's happening, even though it's not your turn, you're not really interrupting. So maybe I just need to more thoroughly test out these off-turn actions, but there are some things I have thoroughly tested and found that they are not to my preference, like squares. Oh, hey, it's the hill that I'll die on. Yeah, you do not need a grid to have a tactical and strategic fight in a role-playing game. Not saying grids are bad. Not saying gridless is way better and always better. Like, come on, when you have dozens of squares around you as options for where and how to move on every turn, it just takes more time to decide where and how to move than if there were 0 squares. You can still have a visual aid, you can still flank and corner and bottleneck and use opportunity attacks and have the high ground and lose the high ground and have all that fun tactical stuff. The only tricky part is that without a grid, some of these tactical positions work best as this other thing I'm not a big fan of these days: conditions. Both D&D and Nimble 5e have about 15 conditions, and whenever a game builds in all of these unique mechanical definitions, some of them are inevitably going to feel counterintuitive to at least some game masters. Like, I don't know about your group, but it took mine way too long before we could consistently remember that the 5e grappled condition does not grant advantage or disadvantage on anyone rolls. It just feels like it should. And cherry-picking from the current draft of Nimble that I have access to, a frightened creature has disadvantage on all rolls while the source of its fear is nearby, while a blind creature has no penalty to skill checks or saving throws. So a blind character can dodge falling rocks better than a frightened character who can see. That's not intuitive for me. And if the counterpoint is simply, well, it says a blinded creature can't see, so of course it has disadvantage on checks and saves, then I go back to my original point. Just don't build in all of these unique mechanical definitions when most of them are just going to be summed up as granting advantage or disadvantage anyway. However, I do really like that they added a burning condition. I made a video about that idea a while back because, yeah, if your game already has conditions, then being on fire should definitely be one of them. And now, here are some even more philosophical complaints. Useless skills. And we're entering the unpopular opinion zone, but think about this. Any one character is going to be good with only a handful of skills from the game's list, meaning the skill list on their character sheet is mostly full of skills that they're not good at and that they will avoid using whenever possible. So not only is the skill list on their character sheet mostly a waste of space for every character, but it is a constant reminder of all the things they cannot do well. And this reminder reinforces the saddest problem-solving playstyle of all. Looking at the problem, then looking at your character sheet and going, well, dang, I guess I can't do that very well, or that, or that, so I guess I can't do anything here. Versus games that just rely on the core attributes and your beautiful, infinite imagination, encouraging you to problem solve like, okay, if I were a person in this situation, what could I try? That gets you asking cool, creative questions, sparking the GM's imagination, and ultimately filling the scene together with cool descriptions and roleplay, which is kind of the point, right? And now, an even weirder, I don't even know if I would call this unpopular opinion, but it's just a weird one that I have now. Weapon and armor proficiencies. Oh, there we go. There's a plane. Okay. We were going way too long with nothing. Wow. Feels good. Okay, so every game, most of the games that I like use this. It's some form of limitation where each class, right, class-based games here, have a specific list of gear that they either have a bonus to use or they just don't have a penalty to use. And I just don't know what the point of this really is. Why are we going out of our way to penalize the wizard who wants to carry a great sword? They probably won't be good with it anyway because of their stats, but who cares if they are? Why doesn't big fantasy want wizards to have swords? Give them swords. You cowards, give the wizards big swords. Okay, and the biggest thing that I think Nimble would have been better without taking this from 5e. Big old chonky hit points. Seriously, hit points are a huge, pun intended, source of slog in D&D 5e. And now I get that combat rounds are a lot faster in Nimble, so maybe this actually isn't a problem. I haven't playtested any high-level Nimble yet, because I just don't really like high-level play. So maybe it had to be there to be compatible with D&D 5e and to be able to transfer monsters very easily. I could see that being the reason, but I just don't like high hit points. But this next one, I think, actually might need to be changed. Long rests. And this is interesting, because in my original plug for the Nimble Zine, I highlighted long rests as one of the things I really liked, and I still kind of do. Check it out. Long rests require at least 6 hours of sleep in a safe place designated by your DM, typically lodging at an inn. Camping in the open wilderness or in a dungeon is not sufficient for gaining the benefits of a long rest. On its face, this feels fun and thematic. It makes exploration feel more dangerous and even urgent because, just like D&D, long resting is how you refill all your hit points, your spellcasting, and some other class features. But combined with the new Nimble rules for exhaustion that we talked about earlier, where levels of exhaustion can only heal during a long rest and you die at only 6 levels of exhaustion, suddenly any multi-day exploration becomes incredibly deadly. And that could all be fine. Except, no, because it does not jive with your super heroic 5e characters facing a matter of life and death on every week-long camping trip. So maybe I'm missing something here, but if that is how these two rules work together, then I would have to homebrew around that. Now, let's talk about some awesome ideas that are changing my game. Nimble 5e Part 3, The Great. Action points. Yeah, even though some of those off-turn actions can jumble things up, they also codify a couple actions that I have seen so many new players ask to do in D&D, but the GM either said no or had to make something up because the game didn't support it. Like, oh, can I jump in front of Bimley to block the goblin's attack? That's heroic. That is a sacrifice I've seen so many players try to do, and Nimble builds it right in with the interpose action that any character can use. I love that. Stat blocks. Feast your eyes on this supremely tight stat block for a goblin. HP, attacks, and one cool move. Good gosh, I might need to lie down. So quick, before the people who hate minimalist stat blocks dislike this video, please give it a thumbs up if you found some inspiration in anything we've talked about thus far, and fret not, Nimble also includes sample stat blocks for legendary monsters that look more familiar and have a whole bunch of cool moves to work with. And this brings up a critical point. Besides the legendaries and the sample goblin, the current draft of Nimble that I have access to does not have a bestiary, and I don't know whether or not there will be one, but I do know that you don't need one, because it takes a negligible amount of brain power and effort to use any monster from any 5e book you already own. Here's everything you have to remember. 14 to 17. If you can remember, 14 to 17 AC is medium in Nimble, you're good. Anything less is unarmored, anything greater is heavy armored, and you don't have to convert anything else. To attack, monsters simply roll their damage dice and stat modifier that's already on the stat block. For saving throws, legendaries have bonuses, so you could use those, but most monsters just don't need them. They're supposed to die in a couple turns anyway. And I'm probably not doing this section justice because there's a bunch of great tips for monster tactics and encounter design that will help with any similar role-playing game. Like there's a whole section about when and how to retreat from combat, which is usually not a thing that 5e players do, but is a very important lesson. And wow, speaking of not doing this game like full justice, I still haven't gone over any classes or spellcasting, which are both very neat, so here we go. The character book starts with this great summary page of the class options. Then, each class follows the same format. 2-page spread for a description and awesome art. Then a spread that covers every main feature of the class, and then a spread that covers the subclasses and the unique resources or other scalable features of that class. But you know what? At first, I was kind of overwhelmed by the amount of new features because, while familiar, every class gets a new feature at every level, but I quickly realized, hold up, every feature is only like 1 or 2 sentences. So the learning curve is incredibly small, and it doesn't feel like you have to pore over a textbook of material just to understand how to play your character. And if you wanted, since this is a digest-sized book, you could even have a single sheet of paper, front and back, that has every feature of your class on it, and just like attach that to your character sheet. Easy. And that's the ticket for me. I want to play games that are not trying to frustrate me as a game master, but to help me and to respect my time. I shouldn't need to read a huge textbook or 3 just to have an exciting imaginary fight against some goblins and make up a fun world with my friends. So it's really just nice to see a high fantasy 5e game built around the ideas of being familiar, fresh, and fun, and easy to read, learn, and teach to your group so you'll actually find time to play it. If you agree, please give this video a thumbs up, support Nimble on BackerKit through the link below, and share this video with your group to see if they're interested. Thank you to the wonderful Bob World Builder patrons for directly supporting what I do, and keep building.